We'd like to welcome you to the BmoreNews Morning Show. My name's Donnie Glover. We have with us the one and only Neil Dubovsky. How are you, Neil?
Morning, Donnie. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Good, good. And we're also being joined by the mayor of Bowie. How are you, Mr. Mayor Tim Adams?
Hey, I'm doing great, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here this morning.
Good deal. I just got one piece of business to take care of, and that's announcing that this segment of the BmoreNews Morning Show is brought to you by one of our sponsors, Beya.org, and that's Black Engineer of the Year Awards. It's happening February 11th through the 13th. Beya, BEYA.org. The upcoming Beya conference features 3 important events. We invite you to learn more about and attend HBCU Homecoming, the HBCU Village, the K-12 Village. And to learn more, you can find out about these events at Beya.org, BEYA.org. And I'll certainly put that in the comments. So, Mayor Adams, how are you today? All is well?
All is well, and I'm excited. Moving forward, you know, we have a lot of challenges in our nation right now, but we need to step up and make sure that we address them.
Well, let's just go back to that. How was it knowing that this Capitol siege is just a few minutes away from where you rest your head?
Oh, you know, and that's the key that all of us need to understand. It's not only that it was so close from a distance standpoint, but from an emotional issue for all of us who really revere our nation and our Constitution. It was close to all of us. You know, it touched all of us. It showed just how fragile sometimes our democracy can be, and how much we have to depend on each other, and how much more work we have to do to make sure that there's fairness and inclusion throughout our country.
Were you worried at any point?
I was worried for those who were there. You know, that's the thing. Look, I grew up in some neighborhoods and some places that, you know, as an individual, I've developed resiliency for that, just being very candid. But I was worried about those who are elected officials who was there, but also about our democracy. You know, understand that these were insurgents trying to take away our fair election. Our election where so many people had spoke out and given their view and their point of what they wanted. And also understand, you know, I think it's horrible that people run around talking about, you know, all lives matter, blue lives matter. I always said, until you can say Black lives matter, you can't say all lives matter. But then we saw these same people who were saying, oh, blue lives matter, and carrying those flags, and yet beating and eventually killing one of the same people they supposedly are supporting. And that's the utmost hypocrisy. You know,
I don't know how much of a history buff you are, Mr. Mayor, but when I think of 1898 down in Wilmington, that was, Neil, are you familiar with the Wilmington Massacre?
Yes.
1898, this was a progressive town. And, you know, it reminds me much of what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but in a different sense. But this was a Black town, Black elected officials, and a mob went in and essentially chased the Black elected officials and white supporters. They put them on a train and chased them out of town.
Yeah, and Donnie, one of the things I think that's important that we make sure people understand is how important it is to know our history. When they kept making reference to 1877 deal and all of that, people didn't realize that deal is what unleashed.
It led to Jim Crow, right?
White
Mayor?
supremacists.
Yep.
Food. You know, and so when people were talking about, oh, we want to do it just like 1877, think about what they were telling us. They were telling us they wanted to go back to the deal that created all of the KKK and all of the true white supremacy and all of the Jim Crow laws. All of that followed from that.
I want to, Donnie, can I pick up on that for a second? Because I think the mayor is exactly right. I think so. You know, history does come full circle, and the 1876 election followed by the 1877 compromise, they have that one incident has coalesced around what we're seeing right now in two different senses. In terms of the election challenge that we saw, which really is taking its cues from that particular election, but then also the fact that the 1877, that election and the 1877 compromise led directly to the withdrawal of Reconstruction and the inaction of Jim Crow, which led to the civil rights era, which is still being fought today, which ultimately led to George Floyd, BLM, and the rallies this summer.
Well, you kind of painted it without the violence. You cannot forget after 1877, when Reconstruction had ended because of this compromise, it became very violent in that particular part of the South, where blacks were fleeing to Kansas, to Oklahoma, anywhere they could to get away from this violence. And let me also add, part of the disdain had to do with the fact that you had black troops monitoring southern cities like Memphis. And these black troops, it's been noted, were dating white girls. So imagine the Confederate soldiers, they lost the war, they got black soldiers marshaling the towns like Memphis, and these black soldiers after work are going down to the sex house, since we have a lady on the line, and they're, you know, being with white women. Oh, that was just unheard of, and that's when the violence really got active.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, we've been joined by a couple of my friends. I'll let them introduce themselves. Let's start with Kivette, go to Umar, and then Willie.
Good morning, Baltimore. I am Kivette Minor-Kane, financial liberation expert at More Life, LLC. And I guide women on their journey to self-sufficiency by teaching them how to transform their minds and transform their money.
Now, she is also a resident of Greenbelt. Umar?
Hey guys, my name is Umar Hamid, and I'm an expert at changing human behavior. I'm a performance coach. I use applied neuroscience to help people break through the barriers so they become awesomer. And great to be here. Nice to meet you guys.
And I have a real treat for you, Tim Adams. We have Willie Flowers. Introduce yourself, Willie.
Hey, good morning. Hey, thank you, Donnie, for inviting me on. I am Willie Flowers. I am the state conference president of the NAACP Maryland State Conference, and also the branch president in Howard County, but also serve as the executive director of the Park Heights Community Health Alliance and Park Heights community. But today, I'm just overwhelmed by this very powerful panel you have, man. I feel smart. I feel strong. So I feel the power.
Well, Willie, I gotta tell him you're originally from Alabama.
The great state of Alabama, a town called Elba, population probably, it used to be 5,000, but I think.
Willie, am I supposed to congratulate you for last night, or are you an Auburn guy?
Oh no, brother, I'm a Nick Saban fan.
So. All right, so congratulate. I'm a Georgia Bulldog, so you guys beat us every year.
Yes, sorry about that, bro.
You know you're not.
Who let them dogs out?
I'll just go Ravens. Reality. So Mayor Adams, we understand that you're running for comptroller of the state of Maryland.
Yes, I launched just last week, my exploratory committee to run for comptroller in 2022. The reason I launched an exploratory committee, because, you know, when you're running for a statewide office, it's a task, and so I wanted to make sure that I took the time to plan and roll it out properly, and to make sure that I started to connect and continue to connect with the grassroots people around the state. So yeah, I'm looking forward to making that run because it's time. It's time. We need to make sure that
it's time for what?
I was about to say, it's time for that change. You know, we often talk about, you know, change. Well, you know, we are that change that we've been waiting for. You know, there are certain things within the comptroller's office we have to do. Look, equity and inclusion are premier to us right now. What I want to do is make sure that we maintain accountability of what we do with our finances. I want to make sure that we fight for social justice, that we make sure that everybody has a fair shot. And then last but not least, make sure we make those changes and make sure that they're lasting changes. One of the things we've seen throughout our history and even of late is people talk a lot. People will say that they're going to do this and all, and there's a lot of symbolic change in just what we say. But we've got to get to systemic change. We've got to get to change where we actually put things in place that will make lives better for those coming along. You know, go ahead.
You say it's time for a change. You mean a black man to run this office? Yes,
that is it. It's someone who, you know, we talk about inclusion and equity financially, you know, and let's just be very candid about it, because that's what we need to be. You know, the Comptroller's office is important. You look at the Board of Public Works. You know, we have had a woman who serves on the Board of Public Works, but we have never had an African American or a person of color so on the Board of Public Works. So we need to make sure that when we start talking about inclusion and equity, that, get me, it's great that people read about it and understand it. It's great that people talk to other people about equity and inclusion and understand it. But the reality is, not only have I read about it and talked to other people about it, I've lived it.
So what exactly do you think are the challenges that exist in the Comptroller's office where that's concerned right now?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Got a little talked over there.
What exactly are the changes that you're talking about need to occur? What are the challenges in the Comptroller's office that you seek to change at this point in time?
I think the challenges that we face in the Comptroller's office is, for example, how do we bring that equity into it? For example, I don't believe that the procurement system in the state of Maryland is geared towards a fairness for minorities and women and small businesses. I think it's geared towards the old boys network that's been there forever and trying to keep them in place. Look, it's geared to those who have had the highest paid lobbyists and influence and play with the insiders, but doesn't give the young new businesses an opportunity. I think when we look at
Mr. Mayor, just last week we had a young man on this very show saying something very similar. His name is Colin Bird, and he views the good old boy network as the enemy of the people. He says he's running against Steny Hoyer because he's representing good trouble.
Mayor Bird and Mayor Bird has a point that he talks about overall. And that's what I'm getting at. See, just so you'll understand, you know, I've been fighting this system for decades. You know, I've been very blessed in my life. You know, I'm just a poor young black kid from New Orleans, and as we say naturally, New Orleans, that has been able to, with the help of other mentors and people, those giants who came before us to stand on their shoulder, to grow one of the largest black-owned businesses in the entire nation. And I think one of the things that we need in the Comptroller's office is someone who has that executive experience, who has had to deal with all of these setbacks, with all of these challenges that we face. You know, all along the way, you know, growing, and particularly in the defense industry as a black man, was not an easy challenge. But I've also seen all the games that are played. And it's time that somebody who can recognize those games steps up and fights it. And I'm blessed enough to be in a position where, like Shirley Chisholm, I'm unbought and unbossed.
So when you talk about a $43.6 billion budget at the state of Maryland, there's an important meeting that happens every Wednesday, Board of Public Works, and that's where contracts are doled out. And we have seen in our tenure, we've seen Mr. Francho, we've seen O'Malley, we've seen Hogan all talk about, there's not enough, and I don't like the term minority. I don't consider myself a minority. I've traveled halfway around the world, and I know damn well that black people aren't
We're the majority. We're the majority.
We're a majority. But here in the state of Maryland, we're at least 30%. And for me, that means we should be getting at least 30% of what everyone else has been eating off of for decades. So help me understand what you would do for such a budget. I've never managed $43.6 billion. Just a disclaimer.
Yeah, and there's many of us that way. But that executive experience is talking about putting in place the controls, accountability. You know, when you talk about change, and that goes back to the question before, what are those kind of things we do? Number one is we don't have enough people of color and small businesses participating, for example, in the Maryland state pension system. They can help manage that. That's a form of equity that we can do and give to them so that they can grow and develop the size and the capacity they need to continue to do things. We can look at all of those kinds of things. We can look at making sure, I've experienced it. I've had contracts that were let to large companies, and they were supposed to have their small business participation. And I get the phone call and they say, well, we're looking for this kind of support. And I need to know that you're able to do this. And you say, yes, I can. And they go, oh, and they hang up. And you never hear from them again. And then you see them talking about they tried to reach minorities and never could find anybody to do it. It's those games.
To be fair, we did have a black man running the pension fund, and he got sticky fingers, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that goes back to about character and making sure that it isn't insiders who place people there, that it's the choice of the people.
So tell me about,
we can't label us all just because of those who do one thing. So,
but it does speak that, and I've look, we've covered many corruption scenarios, situations. We got people coming home from prison. We got people going to prison, but there's a responsibility of those who are able to shatter those ceilings to keep the door open for the next person. And too often we fail.
Let me share on that too. And the thing about it is, I've often said to many folks, and if you talk to people who know me, they'll tell you they've heard me say. See, the reality is this is generation. You know, I have been blessed in my life. I grew my business from the trunk of my car to where it's one of the largest black-owned businesses, minority-owned business in the whole DMV area. So I'm blessed. I don't have to go hat in hand to the politicals. You know, people are saying, "Oh, you're going to put your own money in?" Yes, I'm bringing my own.
Quite honestly, that's where we have failed as candidates. Somebody, hey, Willie, stop. Stay still, Willie. We can hear your noise. Stay still. We have failed as candidates because quite often we don't have our own money. And when we don't have our own money, we start taking money from people who do bad things, ugly things. Maybe I'm sounding like that. People who fail. That's the end of the line. I mean, we've seen it in Baltimore. People going to a state legislator going to prison for $35,000, for $15,000. I'm embarrassed. As a black man, as a Marylander, I'm embarrassed.
Yeah. And so one of the things I'll say to that is a lot of people say, Tim, why would you do this now? You know, you can just sit back and relax. You've done so well financially, your business and all that, but that's the main reason. You see, I say to it, and you hear me say it over and over again, and I'll say it again. I have been so blessed in my life, financially and business and otherwise, because I stood on the shoulders of those giants who came before us. And so now for many of us, it's time for us to straighten our backs and let those coming behind us stand on our shoulders as well. You know, the reality is you get to a point where you need to just hold the door open for those coming behind you to continue to go ahead. And before you let that door open, you make sure there's someone at least holding that door open for the next person as well. So I'm doing this because it's about those coming behind us. We've got to make sure that we create that opportunity for them that was created for us.
You said speak to someone who knows you. Well, I actually did speak with Delegate Darrell Barnes, and he says he gave you a glowing report. That's the chair, for those who may not know, the chair of the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus. So that's a pretty hefty bit of support. So I just got to ask you, your opponent thus far, Brooke Learman, has roots in Montgomery and resides in Baltimore. Now you're in gorgeous Prince George's. In some kind of way, you got to knock off votes in Montgomery, and you got to knock off votes coming out of Greater Baltimore, not just Baltimore City, but also Baltimore County. What's the plan?
Well, the plan is this. This election is not going to be decided by the insiders and the so-called Annapolis machine. This election is going to be decided by the voters, by the grassroots. And so I'm launching a grassroots campaign across the entire state. Look, I've been fortunate enough that people know me across the state for many different things. Understand, I was on the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, on the board. I was elected into the Maryland Chamber of Commerce Hall of Fame for business. The Baltimore-Washington Chamber of Commerce Hall of Fame for business. I've been working on the University System of Maryland Foundation Board. I was the chair of the foundation board for Bowie State University. I'm on the board of Luminous Health, because that health disparity, as we've seen with this pandemic, is real. And so
I didn't hear you mention, Mr. Mayor, I didn't hear you mention the black chambers. You got a Prince George's County Black Chamber, a Maryland Black Chamber. I was
on the board and the president of Prince George's Black Chamber of Commerce, on the board of the National Black Chamber of Commerce, and actually forming a black chamber here in the state of Maryland. Because it is about that equity. It is about stepping up. And as I said, we got to codify a lot of this and stop with all this rhetoric. And
do you? I got to ask you, do you think the MBE program works? Now, I just want to put this one disclaimer.
No, let me tell you.
Why do I have to prove I'm black?
I don't believe it works. And a part of the reason I believe it doesn't totally work properly is because, you can say you're going to do it, but unless you put the funding and the people in place to actually hold people accountable to make it happen, it's not going to happen. When we talk about MDOT and other things, how many people? I think they have like 2 people that they're funded. Well, if you're going to make sure you're going to find out the fraud, the front companies, and all of those things, you need to have more people making sure that these companies are truly investigated completely. And when I say investigate, make sure there is the compliance. And somebody has to look at and stop saying it's just a goal. We need to make sure when we start talking about awarding contracts and making these things happen, that we assist our small businesses and our businesses owned by those of color in growing them, in helping them. I have been very blessed to be able to take companies that I've mentored, even under the SBA programs and others, and take these small companies, and now they have national footprints. And the only thing I ask of them is that they continue to pay it forward, that they mentor others and all. And so the MBE programs have got to have somebody who's in there who's looking and going to make sure that we're going to put the people in compliance. Those who are going to make sure that they check them and follow them and do that. And so, it's like saying, we're going to make sure everybody pays their taxes, but we're not going to put any auditors in place to check them. And that's the reality. And it can't be about who you know. It has to take and start with people having the fundamentals and the support of other businesses. Businesses like myself, who have grown and seen the games and seen those things, but we got to give back and we've got to support them. I'm not sure any of the other comptrollers know what it is to set up a joint venture with businesses. How do you do that? How do you really devise a subcontracting plan? I've helped small businesses by giving them personnel from my company to develop the quality and the skills they need to move forward. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to support them and not just rhetoric. You got
Mr. Mayor, how do we strengthen? Now, no doubt you would be the comptroller for all of the state of Maryland, but there's a very unique relationship between Baltimore and Prince George's County. And I'm not sure that this current generation understands the history that goes back to Tommy Broadwater and Clarence Mitchell III, when there were maybe 20 or so or 11, under 15 blacks in the Maryland General Assembly. How do we better connect Baltimore and Prince George's? We're both at the bottom in terms of public education, yet on the other hand, Prince George's County is the wealthiest black jurisdiction reportedly in the country.
And Don, that's a great question, because it goes back to when we start talking about equity and inclusion. See, I've talked to Tommy and those guys, Senator Broadwater and all, and they talked about how they had such a small number, but was so powerful. And a part of that is because they worked together. They sat down and said, if it isn't going to work for one, it's not going to work for all of us. And they worked together. I mean, because we talk about our schools, and let's just make sure we put that out there. You know, we've got our kids, particularly in Prince George's County and Baltimore, who are going to schools that are crumbling, with teachers who are underpaid trying to teach in those crumbling schools, with outdated technology, with slow internet. And we've got to address that. And how we do that is we start talking about how we work together. We have so much more in common, and we've got to stop letting the political machine divide us.
Do we also let classism divide us? Because if Prince George's County is the wealthiest black jurisdiction in the country, in contrast with Baltimore, which is just brimming with a burgeoning poverty, can our brothers and sisters in Prince George's County actually relate to Baltimore still? Or have we been separated by class?
We've been given that thought. But I live in Prince George's County, and we have all the same issues that Baltimore has. We still got crumbling schools. We still are always at the bottom. Let's just be candid. Prince George's County is always at the bottom with Baltimore when it comes to how our students score in school.
Does that bother you?
Let's be candid. We have that. But the issue is that we continue to let people divide us, Donnie. And that's
not me. I love PG, and as soon as you can get me a crib down there in Woodmore, I'll move there.
I got you. But you know what? But that's the things we have to talk about. We have more in common than we do that differentiates us. You know, saying that we're the most affluent African American community in the state doesn't do a darn thing for our kids if they're not getting the education they need. You know, having affluence is relative. You know, you can live in a big house, and if you ain't got no furniture in it, it don't matter.
Your volume is a little down.
Go ahead.
Your volume is a little down. Can you turn your volume up a little bit? It's kind of faint. But anyway, Willie, you want to chime in here?
No, I want to. I commend anybody who want to take their case to the people. He seems like he framed a significant campaign. I wish him luck. I do want to address the issue about Baltimore and DC, which I don't think we should think in those terms as Donnie is referred to, because we're all catching the same hell, particularly when it comes to what we think we should have quality access to, and that's public education. And
right.
As much as Donnie wants the house in Woodmore, the fact about what has happened to Prince George's County in regard to everything with the housing crisis is they're still feeling the ramifications of that. That $500,000 in house in Woodmore would be $1 million or more in Howard County, and that's a problem. So I wish the candidate luck, and I hope that he can make that an issue, because people are still suffering before the pandemic around this housing reality, and they're going to be suffering after the pandemic because of housing insecurity. And Baltimore is a challenge, and it breaks my heart but Prince George's County is a misnomer in regard to the significant impact of equity, and the reduction of equity, and a high number of people who live underwater in Prince George's County. So I hope that the candidate can do something to address those issues.
Yeah, and,
So,
and
Mr. Mayor, any thoughts on the mortgage lending crisis and its evolution to 2020?
You broke up on me there, Donnie.
Any thoughts about the mortgage scenario in Prince George's County? I think back to the mortgage lending crisis. Have we made progress since then?
Yeah, yes, we have, but we're still, and I think Ms. Flowers summed it up best. We're still suffering from that. You know, and we're going to have now what we've put like in the city of Bowie and other places. We're trying to do, you know, rental assistance, mortgage assistance, you know, as the state talked about, keeping people from being evicted and all. But we see a tsunami coming of people who have worked all of their lives to get into their home, who live paycheck to paycheck, and now are falling behind because they've lost their jobs and other things. We got to be prepared for that tsunami. We've got to make sure that we continue to put out there and fight for their rights to stay in their homes, and fight for rights to get more money from the feds and all, and talk to our congressional delegation and make sure they continue to fight. You know, we've got this little bit of additional CARES money coming, but we need more. We've got to take care of our people, and particularly people who look like us. That's a reality. And I will say to Flowers, you know, we've got to support organizations like the NAACP. I'm a Diamond Life member of the NAACP, and I'm extremely proud of that.
I'm happy for
you. Know, and like your book, Donnie, I am unapologetically Black. You know,
well, we love that, and we love the fact that you're talking about business, because handouts, programs, I'm not sure how well they work, but business, just like you've been able to help mentor other businesses hire people. And I can't speak for Prince George's, but Baltimore we need jobs. We need jobs here.
And let me just go a little bit onto that. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because one of the issues we've had in the past and moving forward, we got to get past, you know, the great Perrin Mitchell, you know, set up the
federal aid program.
Yeah, the Section 8A of the small bill. And the reason Perrin Mitchell set that up wasn't just for some of us to cash in and make some money. The idea was for us to create businesses that would last and would grow and would be able to provide people who look like us a fair chance for employment and growth as well. So, you know, a part of owning the business is, you know, when all the people have always asked me about selling stuff, no, because I create opportunities and know that anybody walking in the door of SATEC, my company, regardless of what they look like, have as much chance as anybody else of growing and developing their career with us. And not only that, I encourage those who have greater opportunities to move on and take them. Because that's what we should be doing. We should be creating those opportunities. And again, I go back to Perrin Mitchell and say, that's what they were fighting for. They were fighting for us to be able to develop capacity and equity. You know, not just to grab a couple of dollars and run. And
Mr.
so
Mayor.
I have been in business over 30 years.
Awesome.
And I started out the trunk of my car. You know, and I know I'm blessed. And again, I was standing on the shoulders of those giants who came before me. But now it's time again, like I said before, to straighten our backs and let those coming behind us stand on our shoulder. See, we allowed a lot of those protections to be eroded on our watch. And we've got to take responsibility for that. The Voting Rights Act and all of those things. And we've got to make sure we own up and stand up and fight for those coming behind us.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
You need to run for governor, man. That's governor talk. I mean, you're running for the tax collector. You got to figure out how to frame that. But I love all your issues, brother. But the governor has the supreme power. I mean, you didn't
But think about this, though.
Pump your brakes, Willie. Pump your
board
brakes.
of Public Works. That board. Let me just say that. That board of Public Works is so important. That board of Public Works, when
Why?
you start talking about getting equity and inclusion, is a great place to do it. Now, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Flower. Yeah, somebody said to me, with all due respect, they said, "Why are you running for Comptroller? There's nothing sexy about it." I don't need nothing sexy. I need something that's going to be in a position where I can create equity and inclusion.
Yeah, Willie, nobody's saying that to Brooke Learman.
Oh, but
I'm listening to his angle. I mean, I'm motivated by it. I just know that governor's office can give you all that.
Yeah, and you're right. But at this point, my focus is on Comptroller. As the mayor of the city, Bowie, you know, I've taken some of that private sector experience that I've had and put to it, and using that public sector as well. But I think the Comptroller is somewhere when you start talking about the impact of taxes, and when you start talking about real equity and inclusion and getting the pension system, I think it's somebody who has had that executive leadership experience. And I see right now that Comptroller seat is open. The
Current Comptroller, Peter Franchot, he says that he's all about the people. We see him on television. He goes around giving away these gold coins to Marylanders, and he gives the impression that he's okay with black people.
Yeah,
but my question is, are black people okay with him?
Well, let me say this about Peter. When I've started and things that I've done over the years, Peter has been someone who's been willing to talk to me and share what he's doing and ideas and all. And so, I wish Peter luck on his next step. But now understand.
I mean, you got to do more than just have pretty black girls around you. Look, we keep it real on the show. We need more than a cute dress walking down the street. We need money.
Exactly. And that's where, as I talked about, particularly like the pension systems and everything, we need to support all of our businesses. But you know what? It goes back to that executive leadership and that experience that I talk about. See, over these 3 decades, I've seen so many games run, and I'm familiar with them. And so when you talk about the Board of Public Works, somebody needs to be able to sit there and say to these contractors and others, what if you talk about small business and participation, let me see what you did. Let's make sure. And if you need some help, I got some names of businesses that you can call who help the different chambers, even the Prince George's Chamber, the Bowie Chamber, others who are experiencing this. The Bowie BIC. How many people are aware of at Bowie State we have the Bowie BIC, the Bowie Innovation Center? How many people know that they were the ones who had an 8A accelerator program that I've been helping to mentor those businesses in there and all, that gets more businesses out, that creates that opportunity for them. And the best way to do that is to be engaged with the businesses. I'm on the Maryland Chamber of Commerce Foundation Board, where we're trying to get businesses to send people in and to our teachers to make sure that they understand what are the things our students need to be successful. So, there are so many things that the Comptroller's office can do. And again, I'm not going to criticize, but I'll be leading in a different time than Peter, and we've got to see what's coming up, particularly after this pandemic. We've got to work through this, and then we've got to get our businesses, but it'll be a great opportunity for us to do that.
Mr. Mayor, did you know that there are 8 black college presidents within 50 miles of where you are? What does that mean for the impact on the African-American economy and education in the area? Just for the record, that's Morgan, University of Baltimore, UMBC, University of Maryland College Park, Coppin, Bowie, St. Mary, UDC, and Howard University. Is that 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, and the point to that is that's where we've got to take that brain thrust, that potential, and utilize it. You know, one of the things we were talking, I was just on the got another email from Bowie State. Like I said, I served as the chairman for the Bowie State University Foundation for many years.
And this is the oldest HBCU in the state of Maryland.
That's right, and raised millions of dollars for the endowment. I have my own personal scholarships I put there. My daughter, who just passed last year,
God rest her.
yeah, received her degree in mathematics from Bowie State posthumously. She died right before graduation.
What happened to her, Mr. Mayor?
She had a heart attack and passed. And I think it may have been COVID related, but unfortunately, we weren't able to get tested in doing that at that time. They weren't doing it for those who were deceased. But the point that I say that is that I've been engaged with HBCUs. I mean, I went to Xavier in New Orleans. You know, a HBCU there. I've supported that. At Bowie State right now, I'm on the advisory committee for the College of Business to make sure that we do that. I have been, like I said, on the University System of Maryland Foundation Board and raising money for all of our universities. And I've had a good relation with them all. The city of Bowie just entered into a historic MOU with Bowie State, where we've got that racetrack property where we're going to be developing it for Bowie State to utilize along with the city to make sure that we work together. So there's a lot of things we can do. And we've got to tap those resources. We've got to make sure, as I said a little earlier, making sure that we have the internships, the co-ops with the students, giving them an opportunity. You know, we can create such a change. And we've got to touch and tap that mind, that experience, that knowledge base from those universities. And we've got to utilize them further.
We've just been joined by my co-host, Marcia Jews. Good morning, Marcia. How are you?
Good morning. How are you all doing? I'm just listening. I don't catch me up. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Mayor, when you think of the number of Black elected officials that we have in 2021, and you think about where we've come from over the past 50 years, 60, 70 years, in my book, you alluded to it, Unapologetically Black. My whole point is, what's the point of having all of these Black elected officials if it doesn't parlay, transfer, translate into economic empowerment? I've seen some of the recreation centers, for instance, in Prince George's County. They're beautiful. But here in the city of Baltimore, we haven't had a new recreation center since the 80s. It's outdated. When I look at DC, I look at Benning Park in Southeast DC, Marion Barry territory, football, lights. We haven't had investment in the Black community in Baltimore City in my lifetime. I'm 55. And so I got to tell you, I'm not that pleased with the Democrats here in the city of Baltimore. How can you change that statewide? Because they come to me when they want my vote. Hey, vote for me, vote for me. When Brown was running for governor, they put signs in my neighborhood that said, vote for the Democrats. Oh, Early put more money at Coppin and HBCU than any governor. Early, a Republican. But all I get in Baltimore, a 9-1 Democratic town, vote for the Democrats, vote for the Democrats, be a good Democrat. We need money. We need jobs. We have $14 billion that has come through the Maryland State Lottery since 1973. $14 billion. New baseball stadium, new football stadium, but we have classrooms with icicles on the windows. Something's fundamentally wrong there.
Yeah, and I think number one, look, let me make sure you understand. I am a Democratic Party trustee. I won the Democratic Leadership Award. But your point is very well taken, because what we have to do is people have to deliver. And the problem is that it doesn't matter what's in front of your name if you're not taking care of people who look like us. You know, and that's that accountability we've got to hold to. You know, I would ask Baltimore this: who provides the report card on how your delegation did? You know, and I don't want to hear that, oh, we tried, we did this, but who provides that report card? And we've got to start getting a report card from us, not from others, that talks about what they did for our communities and hold them accountable. And that's
Well,
not Baltimore, that's Prince George's County, that's all of us. You can't just sit in front of me and say, you know, vote for me because I'm black and I'm a Democrat. You have to have substance. And that's the issue that we're talking about. And that's one of the reasons I'm running for comptroller. We've got to start having substance. People who aren't coming out. Look, I'm fortunate. I can do this because I don't have to come hat in hand to people to give me money. And then I have to compromise my views on how I help our community. I'm blessed to be able to do that. And that's why I'm coming.
let me ask you. We've been doing this morning show. This is our 7th week of this particular broadcast. BmoreNews has been around since 2002. We've covered every major gubernatorial election. Have you spoken with any other black media in Maryland?
Have I spoke with any other? I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit.
Have you spoken with any other black media in Maryland?
Yeah,
have they interviewed
general, yeah, I have in general a couple, but this is by far the most extensive I've had, and I've really enjoyed this.
Well, we're really honored. We're really honored to have you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How can people support you?
Excuse me? How many people support me?
Are you touching the computer, Willie? I see you moving around down there.
I keep
Willie?
trying to get a little closer because you keep breaking up. I can't hear you.
Yeah, Willie, don't touch
how can
the
people
computer.
support you?
I'm not touching it.
How many people support me?
Pay attention.
No, how can people support you?
Well, how people can support me is number one, you know, go to my website, timadams.org. Find out more about me. Start talking and asking the questions of what do we need as a comptroller? Have people understand, look at my history, look at my experience, but more important, take a look at what I have done, my experience, my corporate experience, what I'm trying to do now, and also talk to your friends and everyone and put the word out. This needs to be an election where somebody isn't just because of their relationships with the party and all the insiders and all that. This needs to be about the people.
I got to also tell you, Mr. Mayor, that while I did talk about Baltimore City, there's also Baltimore County, and they're a tad more upwardly mobile than Baltimore City. And as a matter of fact, they have a larger population. So in particular, a lot of African Americans live in the Northwest Corridor. We call it the Liberty Road Corridor. Right. And for me, that's our sort of Prince George's County when I think of Woodmore and all. What would you say to those blacks in particular in Northwest Baltimore County? Why would they consider you over, say, a Brooke Learman?
I think there's a couple of reasons why I'd say vote for me over that. Is because number one, I have the experience. You know, when you start talking about having that leadership, that ability, I've proven that over decades. You know, I think we need someone who has that executive leadership to be able to head a large organization and do that, while also having had, you know, the public service portion of that as well. I have had the opportunity to make sure that I can hold people accountable. You know, and when I say that is people need to understand I'm a fiscal moderate. You know, and I say that in that we have to protect people's money. We got to make sure that we spend the money right. We've got to make sure that we protect everybody's identities and everything else. And we've got to make sure that our tax system is fair and equitable. And I'm not sure that it is right now. I think we lead more towards international corporations than to our own businesses, small businesses, and taxpayers here in the state. And we've got to work at that. And again, we've got to talk about inclusion. You know, we really got to make sure that our small businesses, that our local businesses, that our my young people are engaged, you know, and get a part of those billions that we award. We've got to talk about inclusion.
You know,
We've got to talk about health disparity because the comptroller can raise that, you know, and do it from a position of understanding, not just rhetoric about what we live.
You know, I got to tell you, I don't know in New Orleans history if you're familiar with Henry Adams. There was a man in New Orleans named Henry Adams who was very influential in sending blacks from the deep South, as we go back to that 1877 compromise. He sent them out to Kansas and Oklahoma, Henry Adams, and he had a good friend over in Memphis, Tennessee. I think it was Pap Singleton. And they, along with Robert Reed Church, and that's in the book Black Fortunes, they were instrumental. They didn't go to Kansas and Oklahoma, but they used their money to send blacks out of the deep South. But this guy, Henry Adams, he was from Louisiana, and they were just very influential in what would ultimately become Tulsa's Black Wall Street. But, you know, there were a lot of Black Wall Streets along the way.
Yeah.
What about Willie Adams? Are you related to Willie Adams from Baltimore?
No, he's from New Orleans.
I know where he's from. I heard where he's from, but that
Actually,
don't mean
no,
nothing.
but then, you know, you got to check that tree to where we all go. So
You better
let
check
me
it.
say something.
We had a very important man here, Willie Adams, who made major changes and quite influential here. So it might
He
be somebody
created
part of
New
the
Orleans
tree.
State Lottery. They took it from him.
Yeah.
He created the lottery.
Okay. And let me say a comment on what you were just talking about. And this isn't, but I think it's important to say it. You know, one of the things is I attended, after Xavier, the University of New Orleans to get my MBA. And one of the things that I remember when I was younger and helped motivate me to go to the University of New Orleans is that David Duke, the KKK, had said that Black folks didn't have the intellect to succeed at the University of New Orleans. And so, you know, that's where I went to get my MBA. Now, I just got recognized this past year as the Distinguished Alumni of the Year for the entire university. One of the things that
That's
I have
huge.
done and continue to over years and years is for young Black men like myself who go to those kind of universities, particularly the University of New Orleans, and face so many challenges in trying to succeed there and get out. So I've been supporting a scholarship program which they call the Momentum program, with the men capitalized. And it's to get and help young Black men to graduate from the university. And one of the things that we do is what you just talked about, is I provide them, you know, money for suits and clothes and travel, and we send them around the country to go to other conferences and others, because as you said, we found out when people get a chance to travel and get out and get to see other Black folks and what they're doing and get new ideas and go back, it helps them to be successful.
Yeah.
So I've been
Especially
doing that
young men, especially young men at the age of 18, 19, 20, here in Baltimore.
Exactly.
We need to get them out of town. Get them out.
Yes. And so I've been supporting that for years, you know, and I continue to do that.
And that's huge.
Important.
It's huge, Mayor.
Yeah,
I went to Dillard, by the way, sir.
All right. Well, you know, we did beat y'all up a few times.
I know, on a couple of times, yeah, on a regular, actually. But you know, I think what's really interesting is that New Orleans is a different kind of place, right? But when you put it together with a Prince George's County, right, and you look at the difference in terms of relationships and how you build together, how you work together, and we need more of that in Baltimore, quite frankly. We need to be able to have a connector. And we need our leadership, excuse me, our statewide leadership to be sensitive to all of the issues that are surrounding not just the zip codes, but the people that live in those zip codes. And we seem to separate that district by the egos of the people that are in power versus the relationships that need to be had in understanding what those needs are. So you can ride down a street, you can see boarded up houses, you can see people on the corner, but they've been like that for years. And it's a state and local issue.
I have a question for the mayor.
Yeah.
I think I know the answer to this. Which high school did you go to?
In New Orleans?
Yes.
Well, actually, I started off at St. John Vianney Prep. I thought I was going to be a priest.
Yeah,
when I found out
I know the history of St. Aug.
St. Aug.
I know the history.
My brothers went to St. Aug. My nephew went to St. Aug. Yeah.
They became Sigmas too, by the way.
So what I want to say as a follow-up to Ms. Hughes' statement, and Baltimore had this too. The significance of the Black Catholic influence in New Orleans and Baltimore is very significant to these basic details. And unfortunately, think times have changed, and that force is not as strong as it used to be. But that stabilized New Orleans and Baltimore because they were sister cities in this whole thing. Right. Nobody talks about that a lot.
Yeah, and I think there's so much that we can learn from New Orleans and from Baltimore to share throughout the entire state, and bringing us all together. Because I think what Donnie said a little earlier is significant, because to a certain extent, we've got to understand it isn't just black and white. It's about class as well. Look, I am proud to say, because I was loved. When I grew up, it was 6 of us sleeping in one bed. And that's not an exaggeration. I didn't know there was anything different than that. My mother was a student. My father was a police officer. And I came from a background where, I was loved. I didn't think about financial and all of that. So, everything I've gotten in my life, I've had to fight for. And what I found is that fight is best fought when you surround yourself with people who have like mind. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing, is doing this about people who are like mind, who have those similar experiences. I often talk about the poem If, where you talk about being able to be with people from all different levels and being able to do it. Because my thing is, I believe, as I've told my son, I want to be able to drop you off on any street in the United States and you survive.
Right.
I want you to understand your people. The last thing I want is this thing we've got where when we see people who look like us, folks want to get scared. You should feel more at home and safer amongst ourselves. And that's what we've got to get to. But one of the things to do that is find that level of financial and educational equity. Making sure that we have that medical equity where everybody is treated fairly, where people have a thing. The big thing in Baltimore that always riled me is these cases where with the lead poisoning, and knowing the damage that does to our folks, and then having people have taken advantage of them financially. Instead of being able to have money to care for them and take care of them long term, they sell it out short term. And that's just wrong. But we as a community have to come together. We're not going to agree on everything, but we should agree that we've fallen behind and we need to help lift each other up.
Quick question, Mr. Mayor. 54,000 that you managed there in Bowie versus 6 million in the state of Maryland. How do you make such a transition?
Well, you've got to understand, right now I got offices in over 22 states, And I have people all around the world at any time. So it's about executive leadership. And that's what I've been saying. You know,
and how was it becoming the first black mayor of Bowie?
Excuse me? What was it like?
Yeah, to become the first black mayor of Bowie, and the mayor before you was there, what, 21 years?
Yeah, 23 or something.
Wow.
Let me tell you now. I'm going to be very candid because we got to speak truth to power. There were doors that I went through. See, I will say this now. I told people then when I was running for mayor, I wouldn't be out hustled or outworked at anything. I've never been outworked or out hustled or anything in my life, and I wasn't going to start with the mayor, and I'm not going to start with the comptroller's race. So understand, I went to doors. Understand, I went to doors where people said, "Oh, I could never vote for a man in a wheelchair." Oh no, never. No. I had some folks look at my card, you know, my poll card, showing them my face. They looked at my family and looked at me and said, threw it in my face and said, "Never in Bowie."
What?
Yes, but they're always going to be those kind of people. But the majority of people voted for me because
Miss
they
Adams,
were able to do that.
you got to check out that book, Black Fortunes. There's a guy in there also named Robert Reed Church, and he was the wealthiest black man in the South at the time. And he was friends with the guy I told you about in New Orleans, Henry Adams, also Pap Singleton in Memphis. But he was the wealthiest man in the South, and he put his money where his mouth was. Ultimately, he put $10,000 up for blacks to move to Oklahoma. So really what I write about in this upcoming book is how Tulsa didn't happen in a vacuum. Tulsa's Greenwood district was the result of years of fighting, of people standing up just as you did to go against the good old boys.
Yeah, and you know, the one thing we've got to remember, and I think Ms. Hughes was talking about, you know, New Orleans, and you get the feel, and you know about New Orleans because, you know, you still had to fight for everything you want.
Right.
You know, and that's how it is now. And you know, too many people become afraid, and I'm gonna use that term, afraid of losing something.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is,
or afraid to stand up.
Yeah, and so
because they could lose something if they do, though.
Exactly. You know, people say, "Well, aren't you worried about what might happen to you?" No, because it's not about me. I've been blessed, and no matter what happens tomorrow, I know I can look at myself in the mirror and say, "You go, man. You keep doing the right thing. You look yourself in the eye."
Where'd you get that fighter spirit?
You know, I got that fighter spirit from my family.
New Orleans.
From my
Right.
mom.
Because they're fighters.
Look. Ms. Jules is from there.
I'm not from there, but I've been there. I lived there.
I'm going to say this. We moved from the city to outside by Destrehan and all. And that's why I finished up high school and all. And the reason for that is not knowing any better. I grew up in the Ninth Ward. I was walking around singing, "I'm from the Mighty Nine and don't mind dying." And my father was a police officer, and he was like, "Oh no, we out of here." No. You know,
what year was that?
I grew up in God's country, the 7th Ward, on Annette Street, by what was then London Avenue. You know, used to walk over to Dillon. You know, so I grew up in an environment, and I moved out to the suburb to where they had just integrated. And I say this to people not for nothing else, but to understand.
Right.
See, I know what it is. My father was a police officer, but I know what it is to have a police officer put a gun to your head and cock it. I lived that. I know what it is to have a 12-gauge pump, the sound of that echoing in the stairwell at my school as it pointed at my chest. I know what it was to be running from a white crowd, from a mob, knowing that if I fell, I would never get up again. I know what it is to see somebody at school in the middle of a riot get shot through the head and die in front of my eyes. You know, but what that taught me is that hate knows no color. You know, because the kid who died was white. You know, so I've had all of these experiences, and I learned from that, and I don't hate, but I do want change. I do want equity.
So,
You know, we had alluded. I'm sorry, we alluded to that 1898 Wilmington, North Carolina massacre, but there was also one in New Orleans, 1866, and it was one of the largest slave insurrections in the United States.
Insurrections, yeah, and they went by the plantation. And you don't hear much about that. You don't. But you know, because there's this thing we constantly seem to want to talk about, that slaves were happy being slaves.
No, they fought. As a matter of fact, y'all was so strong in New Orleans that after the massacre, I understand that they put heads of slaves on pikes for 60 miles straight on out of the city of New Orleans.
That was a common practice in Haiti.
Yeah, let me just say this so you'll understand. Where I talked about where we had those race riots and when we fought and all was at Destrehan High School, the old one. The school was built right next to a plantation, an actual plantation. So we had to be bussed in, and that's what we got to see every day, going by the plantation. You know, and so there were challenges. Don't get me wrong, but that's where we learn to fight. That's where we develop the mettle of who we are. But I also say to you, in seeing Tim Weber die, I realized that hate doesn't have a color, because like I said, he was white. You know, and so I fought a lot of fights. You know, you can go and see people say, why are you fighting this and that in the court for small businesses and you don't qualify? I said, because it's the right thing to do. Because many of our small businesses don't have the resources to. I do. And I fight for them. And they'll never know it's me. They'll never know who did that. But that's how it should be. It shouldn't be about what's glamour and your name out there. I mean, I need to do that to be elected, but it's just about what is that legacy you're going to leave? And that legacy shouldn't be about your name. It should be about making this world a better place than you found it.
So, Mayor, give me 3 things that the rest of these counties need to be doing in order for you to win and become the next comptroller.
I think the things that we need to do is, number one, is to make sure we educate each other about the comptroller's office, number one. I think because it's a down ballot, a lot of people don't realize the power that is in the hands of the comptroller. Number two is, I think people need to realize and know that independently, no African American in the history of the state of Maryland has been elected to statewide office.
Say that again.
In the history of the state of Maryland, no African American has ever been elected to statewide office. Now, we've had some who have run on a ticket with governors, you know, along with them. But independently, we have never in the history of the state had an African American elected to office statewide. And
that's huge. That's huge.
And it's time because, and I think the thing that we have to talk about is this should not be about political insiders. This should be about who's going to do the best for all the citizens of Maryland. Who has the real leadership? Who really has the credentials, the executive leadership that really can make a difference?
I'll be honest with you, Mr. Mayor. We had Brooke Learman on this show, and I asked her, what would she do for Black business? And I need to hear a little more than what we've been hearing for the past 20, 30 years. I mean, this is a whole new cadre of elected officials. Mike Miller's gone, Mike Bush is gone, but I want this current generation of elected officials, Black, white, and otherwise. If you're serving the state of Maryland, you must speak up for Black business. You must. 30% of the state. And so when I hear Delegate Marianne Lasanti up in Harford County refer to gorgeous Prince George's County as the N-word district, and I see that she is still in office, I've realized the Good Old Boys Network is alive and kicking here in the state of Maryland. I don't like that. I think she should have been booted as soon as it came out of her mouth.
Yeah, because if one of us had said something like that, there'd have been such a
no question.
A reaction to it. But you know, the reality goes back to like I was saying, we have an opportunity. We are the change we've been looking for.
That's right.
You know, and we've just got to make sure that they're going to be those who, for their own personal and political reasons, are going to want to vote for somebody else just for themselves. I'm not in this for me.
Well,
I'm
speaking
in
of all,
this for folks who look like us. I've been helping Black businesses my entire life. I've been working for Black businesses my entire life. I continue to give back to my community and making sure that I'm trying to make sure that folks like us who choose to get that education. And I truly want to make sure that we become the linchpin, i.e. that connector for all of us throughout the state, that we understand we deserve better. And we can't let that Annapolis machine just chew us up and spit us out. You know, people get angry with me for saying this, but I'm still going to say it. I'm tired of us being political and economic sharecroppers. You know, at the end of the day, no matter how hard we work politically, we don't own the power.
Whoa.
Well,
work economically to do things. We still don't end up owning anything.
but it's straight up.
Tired of us being sharecroppers.
That's straight up, though.
You got to talk the language people understand.
That's straight up, though. That's straight up. And that's a sucker punch right there.
Whoa.
And that's who I am.
That's the sucker punch right there. And that's real.
It is.
No more hoes.
We can't be afraid to say it. You were talking about what it takes to help our businesses and all that. It's about being brave enough to speak truth to power. You know, and not be afraid about what somebody might take from you. Hey, I look at it this way. I was blessed. God gave me what I got. If God chooses to take it, that's so be it.
All right, Tim Adams.
Who I believe. And that's just like I made sure to say, yes, I'm a Diamond Life member of the NAACP. And I'm going to say to a lot of people, why aren't you members of the NAACP? Why aren't you fighting that fight?
Well, after we talk with you, we're going to put Willie on the hot seat, and he's going to give us an update on some things.
Wait a minute. Whoa. I don't want to sucker punch now, Johnny.
Hey, I want to thank y'all, though, for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Yeah.
You know, I have been someone who, to a certain extent, has been behind the scenes. Because, again, it hasn't been about me. But the reality is for statewide, I have to get out and I have to talk about who I am. And, you know, I believe, you know, you can't start reading your own headlines and you can't believe, but we've got to have a voice. And a lot of our young Black men and women need to see people like us out there and know that we're there.
What particularly warms my soul, Mr. Mayor, is the fact that you understand political economy. Politics without economics is nothing. If our political power doesn't translate into economic development, including jobs, it means nothing. And so throughout the state of Maryland, we have more Black elected officials than ever in our history. Yet, East and West Baltimore look the same. And that's a problem for me, especially in a 9-1 Democratic town where I am demonized if I dare look toward a Republican for anything. As a matter of fact, in state politics, you can't be on a Democratic State Central Committee if you've ever done anything supportive of Republicans. My only thing is, okay, I'm a Democrat, I'm here, but I'm not seeing the Democrats deliver to my community.
Yeah, I agree with you. And let me just play a little twist of words, because it's also something I believe, and if you really think about it, it makes sense. We keep talking about the business of politics, but we got it wrong. It's really the politics of business. And that's what we need to make sure we emphasize. It's the politics of business.
We should be able to win regardless of who is in office. That's what I was taught.
Yeah, I get you. And I think, you know, we've just got to continue to do as you have and others have and keep talking about it. Because there are other people on the other side of the aisle that I talk to.
Right.
That I know. You know,
I'm glad you said that. If it weren't for
people were like, why? You know, I support the environment. You know, people were like, why would you go on the commission, you know, from the governor? Because that's how you make change. That's how you make sure that we're making sure we are represented.
Right.
Let me also say it was because of Nick Kipke and the Republican caucus that we now have a black Speaker of the House. And kudos to your neighbor, your homeboy in Prince George's County, Delegate Derek Davis, because he took a step back.
That's right.
As did Maggie McIntosh in Baltimore, to allow Adrian Jones to be the compromise candidate, because Derek Davis could have taken that vote for Speaker of the House to the floor with the Republican caucus and won.
Right.
Yeah, that's what people need to hear, the truth.
Right.
Because Derek is a good man. He is. He's a good man. And he's a fighter and he's smart. And so, all of these folks, it's time that we coalesce all of this. It's time that we bring us all together and start talking about what's in our best interest.
Right. Period.
Because when I say our best interest, that's every Marylander. If people who look like us, if black folk can do better and improve their lives, it improves our state.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Speaking of which,
you get enough people with jobs now, no matter who they are, you're talking about more state revenues.
well, I just want to say we've talked about Greater Baltimore, Prince George's, Montgomery, but BmoreNews.com, we do cover stories down on the Eastern Shore, including Talbot County, Dorchester County, down there where Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass were born. And there are a lot of black people down there, more than one might think.
Yeah,
and not just Prince George's, down in Charles County, south of you. So what's your plan to reach those outlying areas?
Well, my plan is to make sure that I have boots on the ground in every county in this state. And I'm reaching out, and you know what's a blessing? Since I announced my candidacy, people are just calling in. And there's some people who are just like you, Donnie, asking the hard questions, and they hear the answer, and they're coming back and saying, how do I help? What do I do? I want to be a part of this. So, a lot of people are looking at this and understanding it's about the greater good. And I don't need to do this for ego, because I learned to put that on the side a long time ago. And I'm not definitely, as you talked about a little earlier, I've been blessed financially. So, ain't nothing sticking on my fingers.
Your final thoughts,
the right thing to do.
Your final thoughts, Mr. Mayor, before we close out, and do tell people how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, I think the easiest way is just go to timadams.org. Again, Tim Adams, TIMADAMS.org, and learn. And I ask people, support our communities. Support your neighbors. Because it's about that collective. We've got to get back to that. We keep talking and always hear about it takes a village to raise a child. Well, a part of that village helped each other and not just the children.
That's right.
Also, special thank you to Mr. Jerome Stevens for making this introduction.
Oh, wonderful.
Very proud of him, very grateful for his contribution to this network.
Hey, thank you all so very much for affording me an opportunity to be here. But, as I said, I am 100% real, and I speak truth to power. And as you can probably tell, I have no fear. The only fear I have is of God.
I want to see what kind of gumbo you got.
Oh, I make some gumbo.
That's a conversation.
I'm naturally gnarly.
I think you should whip up a big old pot and then send us a package, a care package. We need a care package.
Surprised if you get one now.
We need a care package. We need a care package. But don't come in here with no half-stepping gumbo. You come in here with some half-stepping gumbo, brother. I'm going to call you out.
And we want some FFA. We want some FFA.
Look, I learned how to make gumbo from my mama.
I'm going to call you out. You better come correct.
And you know what? If I say you something that isn't up to par, you need to call me out.
I would too.
And look, I might put just a little bit of that real good jambalaya.
Just a little something on the side, brother. Too. Okay, yeah. I love you, yeah.
Mr. Adams.
Hey,
Mr. Adams.
again, yes.
Tell them the first thing you do to make gumbo. What's the first step?
You gotta make that roux, baby.
All right.
Serious roux. Now you don't
Yeah,
Coasting, but the roux is everything.
exactly. That's the bait, and you know, you got to make it.
That's that foundation.
It takes skill though, and you can't be rushing.
But you got to tell them also.
What you know
What is a
about the
mobile-
roux, Willie Flowers? First of all,
Alabama, you close enough.
what you know about
No.
what you know about the
No.
roux, brother?
No, what he knows about Mayor Adams. Tell him what the first Mardi Gras is. What did Mardi Gras originate? Tell the world.
He's talking about the moon pie folks over in Alabama. That's what he's talking about. Yeah, look, they don't have real.
They don't know. They know real thing.
No, he didn't say it.
I'm sorry. I know we digress, but I
okay.
really enjoyed
It's
having the
wonderful.
opportunity to talk to folks and to share some of my vision as we go along. But you know, it's people like yourselves that we need to be engaged and talk to people. You know, because they're going to be the naysayers. They're going to be those who are so encamped with the political machine are going to do everything they want to do to stop this. But I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to make sure our voices, because I speak for us, not for me. And I got to make sure our voices are heard. And as I said, I can only take the best words I know, and that's from Shirley Chisholm. And that again is, I'm unbought and I'm unbossed. And thank you for having me on today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for
You're gonna
joining us.
win. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Baby.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And we'll bring you on as soon as you like to come again.
I look forward to it.
Yes, sir.
Now, let me get to figuring out when I got time to make some gumbo.
Yes, sir.
Right. Because you know, if you don't send it up here, we're gonna talk about you for real.
I got you.
But you also got to try some of our very homemade Maryland crab soup, because I would say it would give your gumbo a good run for the money, especially if my mama made it. But
Lord have mercy.
that's another story. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Tim
We'll
Adams.
do a cook-off once we come out of COVID.
That sounds good to me. And look, I know better than to ever challenge a man's mama. So
Yeah.
I won't do it.
Bless your heart. Bless your heart, Mr. Mayor. Thank
God
you.
bless
God
you.
bless you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there you have it, Willie. I know it was hard for you to sit still that long. We lost a couple of pounds in the process. And Willie, it seems like you was messing with that volume. But anyway, Willie, what's your thoughts?
I mean, he's personable. I like the guy. I just wish he framed that. I wish he was running for governor. I mean, he's got the charm. He's, talking about the right issues. He's definitely I could feel his spirit. I mean, I'm very motivated by him, and I don't know what to say. I mean,
Country
it's
boy.
refreshing. It's
Yep.
refreshing.
Willie, I've never seen you like this before.
Right.
You genuinely like
Right.
the-
Right.
No, I mean, honestly, man, and you know me, all I can say is when I guess you feel people are authentic, then that's what I react to, I guess.
That's real.
You two people here are authentic. I guess that's why y'all have been on the radio so long. And I mean, he seems like a great guy. He stabilized the issues. He talked about significant things about the foundation. And he's telling you that he has, he's been elected. He's telling you that he doesn't have to go after anybody else's money. He has his own money, even if it's just to get the startup. Because if he wins the primary with his own money, everything else will come. I mean, he was sharing some real stuff about family issues that allow you to connect with him. There it is,
Marsha, COVID has affected the entire world, and you could feel the pain of his loss most recently. You have kept COVID up front. You won't go anywhere.
Right.
I joke you to say that you are being held hostage. COVID is real.
COVID's real. And I think I'll be 69 in March.
Go ahead, girl.
I thought
Right?
you were like 52, 53.
Yeah, no, that was 20, however many years ago. But I am, and that's real. I live my life young and vibrant, because I'm not going to go out like that, right? I'm not going out like that. But I'm not suicidal. I'm not suicidal. That's huge. And if you are going into an environment, you're not wearing a mask, you're going to be around people who do not wear masks, you're going to sit around and party, or they put on a mask, then they take it off to eat, to drink, or you walk around, you have the mask under your nose, and you're inhaling everything that's in your space. You're allowing people to come to your door to bring you a box. You're not cleaning the box off. The box has been sitting isolated in the back of a truck. You don't clean it off. We have a protocol in my house where you, from the back door to the front door, bringing groceries in and receiving packages in the front door. There's a protocol. We have bleach. We have other things. We have buckets of water with bleach. We have rags.
And how many people do you allow in your house?
None. My daughter, my grandson, and I live in this house. And everything that I'm doing, I don't need to go anywhere. Go ahead.
Willie, bring us up to speed on, you were talking about the power of the Black electorate, not just there in Prince George's County, but in the state of Maryland. And then you also alluded to New Orleans, to Alabama. When I think of you, Willie, quite frankly, I think of not just freedom fighters, but I think of Black Wall Street. We've talked many times about A.G. Gaston down in Alabama. Was that 4th Avenue, 4th Street?
Birmingham.
What did you get from Tim from the mayor with respect to business and how, or whether or not he would be an advocate for Black businesses?
What I heard, because of my experience, is that he mentioned that he went to Xavier, but
and the university in New Orleans as well.
Right. So when I speak to people from New Orleans and Baltimore, because I just am so very impressed with the history of the Catholic movement in Baltimore. People don't talk about it much, but they stabilize the social determinants that are important, and those are housing, having access to resources, jobs, and jobs for a generation, so you can send your kids to.
And don't forget education.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Education is a part of the Catholic reality.
Are you Catholic?
No, I'm not. I'm just a historian.
Baltimore is home to the oldest Catholic church in the country, correct?
Right.
The Basilica of the Assumption.
Yes.
It was the oldest movement. Well, the Oblates was founded in Seton Hill.
The Sisters of Oblate.
Right. Mother Mary Lang. All that started in Baltimore. And unfortunately, because of all these barriers, people don't know that significant history in the history of St. Francis Academy. But there was a direct line, not only from Haiti to New Orleans, but New Orleans to Baltimore, because after the Haitian Revolution, all those Mother Lang, they all came up because of that. They came to Baltimore. Actually, she went to Charleston first, and then they came into Baltimore. And when she came here, she saw that all these Black children didn't know how to read. And so she created a St. Francis Academy for that purpose. And that is the oldest, longest serving Black educational institution in the world, probably. But I bring that up to say that, first of all, people don't know that history, but more importantly, that was stabilized because of this is all because of the French influence on slavery. And a lot of the French actually allowed enslaved people to learn how to read. And that's the difference, I guess. But my point is, those both.
We're not going to give the French a total pass, because we know the French have stuck up Haiti and are still sticking up Haiti to this day.
I agree, but all I'm saying
is, got his hind parts handed to him by Toussaint Louverture and then Jean-Jacques Dessalines.
I'm not. That's not what I'm saying about that. I'm just saying that as a culture, Black folks were allowed to get enthusiasm, confidence through education, and they can. And if you can read and write, you can go someplace. And in addition to that, the Black Catholic culture bolstered education through the same school. So that's missing. But so when I heard him speaking, that was the first thing I thought about. I didn't know he was from New Orleans when I first came on, but when he said,
he got too much swag to be from Port Gorgeous, Prince George's County.
Well, hey, brothers are everywhere with swag. But
okay, maybe that wasn't fair. But
so
you did the draw, you know that New Orleans. Hey, baby, I've been to New Orleans.
Well, he laid back on the accent until Marsha Jews came on the phone, and he kind of got loose then.
I started at patois, then he knew what I was talking about.
He got loose. But what I was going to say was he went to Xavier, and then he went to University of New Orleans, and he was in a significant major. When he said I think he said he got an MBA there at that time in history. And then did you hear what he said? That David Duke said y'all are dumb. And he worked against all that. He didn't get into the details of what he went through, but I went through a mainstream white institution, and trust me, you have to continue to fight. And if you don't, then you're gonna be a different person. The reason he's talking that trash he was talking is because he ain't stopped fighting. And so that means that when he got to New Orleans because of all that. I mean, I just hear what he went through from the Ninth Ward.
He said he got chased.
That spoke volumes right there. He didn't have to say nothing else. I was like,
sounds like South Baltimore to me, Carol Park.
whoa.
And then he got his confidence from Xavier. If you meet folks from Xavier, and like she said, Dillard, because that's a sister schools, when you meet those folks, they come out of there in that time, they come out strong and bad.
Serious. And they ain't playing. Ain't nobody playing.
Yeah, and they usually, now some of them, they usually don't leave New Orleans though, but when they do, they make it happen. So I'm not surprised about, I don't even know the details of his success, but that's what I interpreted from what he presented in this space.
Dr. A.N.O. Emory was from New Orleans.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dr.
She and
A.N.O.
her husband.
Educator.
Yep. She and her husband.
But she went to Tuskegee. And
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And let the world know it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Marsha Jews, what else impressed you about the mayor?
I just like the fact that he was straight up no chaser. You know, I'm a in your face kind of chick, and I don't want to hear all the fluff. I've heard it all before. I've heard it all before. I've lived all over this country, and I don't want to hear any more foolishness. And he was just straight up.
You heard from Brooke Learman. You were here during that interview. You heard from Mayor Tim Adams.
I wasn't here for Learman, but I saw the tape. I would spend my money with Mr. Adams. And I'd spend my money with Mr. Adams because he is sensitive to people who have melanin in their skin. He's sensitive to people who are socioeconomically either at the border of the spectrum or in the spectrum. And we don't always think about who the real constituents are. Just because you're not making, living in a 12,000 square foot house and you're making 7-8 figures, that does not make you perfect. That does not make you, we're proud of you and congratulations, but there are people those people aren't helping. Our people need help. Our educational system is jacked up. We have a housing issue. We have communities that are marginalized. We have unemployment rates that are out of this world. We have a street commerce that has taken over our communities. It's a street commerce from stealing and reselling on the street. That's a resale. So if you steal something, you then go put it out on a table and you sell it, that's reselling.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we allowing this? We've got a drug culture where we know that Black people are bringing all those drugs in here.
You should ask them
People need a real job. People need real jobs, real careers, real futures. They need to have a home. They shouldn't be homeless. And we need people to be able to be in the state of Maryland to deal with all of the realities of all of the state of Maryland.
Willie Flowers, I see two battlegrounds. One battleground I see is the east side of Baltimore County. The other battleground I see in this comptroller's race is, of course, Montgomery County. How what would you suggest to the mayor in terms of penetrating the east side of Baltimore County, which is a lot of white folks, and then Montgomery County?
Yep, Bethesda, Gaithersburg, all that.
Well, I think that I mean, I was, like I said, I was impressed by his his worldview of the many things. But when you say the east side of Baltimore County, you're
some
talking
kind of way that means he's got to link up with, or at least know the council chair out there, Julian Jones, who's poised to be the first Black county executive if Johnny Ochesky decides to run for governor.
Well, I don't believe in that kind of campaigning. I think he should create a message that speaks to those people who live in that type of scarcity on that side of town, because there are a lot of poor people over there too who are poor and white. And if you can create a message that speaks to their economic situation that is framed the same way, so I mean, what he's doing, he's got to have a message that hits everybody, and he doesn't seem inauthentic.
But they do have industry on that part of the county, going into the harbor, Bethlehem Steel, that Sparrows Point area.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. But the aftermath of all those businesses closing is a lot of people who live in scarcity. There's a lot of drugs over there on that side of the county. So the same challenges that you're talking about in the city exist over there. If he can create a message that speaks to their ability to feed their children, allow them to save money, to go to college, and to live in a situation where they can retire without the challenges that type of negativity, as she says, the underground economy brings, then he can get white folks even to come out to vote for him. And I think that's very possible.
And the whole thing that's that whole area going out there, that is really changing a lot. So they're moving a lot of the people that are middle to lower income areas, they're moving them out because they're buying up all of that property and making the conversions into upper middle class and upper class housing.
Okay, Marcia, you've lived in Montgomery County. What will the mayor have to do to penetrate communities like Bethesda? So
in Bethesda, it is really all of the people who are doing foreign service primarily. Now, that's when I lived there, and I'm sure it's not much different because it's right up Mass Avenue and it's right up Wisconsin Avenue. And most of those people are coming from those embassies. They work in those embassies. So you are finding a total culture. I mean, there are very few Black people that are in Bethesda when I lived there. And I would imagine that has grown some because of sprawl. But you're going to be able to have to talk to all of the different ethnicities that are out there. And there are a lot.
Including the Latino community.
A lot. And you have a large, and pardon me?
They're not in Bethesda though.
No. But you have to look at what's there. So some of those people aren't even eligible to vote. So you've got to really get over there because they're foreign service. They're not residents. So he's got to figure out who's living where, because they're always living in pockets. Right? Who's living where, and what are those central points for them to be able to coalesce?
But what role do you two think that other Black elected officials will play in the Mayor Adams for Comptroller campaign? I mean, you have some prominent Black Democrats throughout the state. Any of them come to mind that could be a resource, an ally for the mayor?
Donnie, those people are going to be fighting for their own lives. They're fighting for their lives now to keep anybody of quality out of any of their races. That's what they do. Because they're raising money to have the first primary is the fundraising primary. So if you got money to scare people off, you can keep them out of the race. So insecure, and most of them are elected officials in majority Black districts. That's what they do. They try to keep the real community people from running against them, so that they can have a free run in the primary. So they can't help them. And the other piece that they could help them, as you know, after they win the primary, they could help anybody running statewide, but they don't because they don't have to run themselves.
Mhm.
A statewide person would need someone on the ground because they got to do the big stuff at that point.
Right.
And you've seen in the last two gubernatorial races where these, and you saw it in 2002 with Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, where they expected these local senators and delegates to do the work that the governor should have done, and they don't do it because they don't have to in the general. So I don't think they can help him. He's got to inspire them not to stab him in the back, because we had a situation, I don't know if you kept up with this, Donnie, but right here in Howard County, where an African-American judge ran, he eventually won, but he was not endorsed by the, he was an African-American candidate who was a Democrat. He was not endorsed by the Democratic Central Committee. And in fact, some of them supported a Republican appointee for the same race and would argue with you about why they were doing it. Fortunately, his name is Judge Quincy Coleman. I would encourage you to, I don't know if you can pull him in now or not, but he did the grassroots stuff to connect with people on the ground. And he was able to pull off the race against some what would appear to be insurmountable odds because he wasn't well known in the community. But you
said he was well known in the community, but not in the political circles. I thought
I said he was not well known in the community, and he was not political, and that's why. But what he did do was he started knocking on doors anyway, and he was able to pull it off. He has a strong family. His family network has 2 daughters and a wife, and they took the case to the people. And when I tell you, I mean, I could talk about it all day because I was very impressed with that race. And you know how we participate in this stuff, Donnie. We see these people who present one thing and they turn out to be rotten. And so when I see somebody who continues on despite not having all those traditional supports with the party and all that, and they go out and whip the party's butt, then I'm inspired by that. So, and he ain't a young person either.
As you were talking, who comes to my mind is the late B. Gaddy, Teresa of Baltimore, who was not a member of the East Side Democratic Organization, yet she won without them. I was really inspired. Marcia, when you think of a comptroller who is business-minded in a state like Maryland, what does that say to you? Does it build more confidence for you in his abilities?
It builds confidence because he has a bigger, broader bandwidth.
Yeah, you gotta be a warrior to be a fighter. I mean,
well, he's a fighter. He's already stood in front of a 9-gauge shotgun, so he's a fighter. He's not afraid. The key really for me is reality. Is he understands all of the communities. He understands it. He understands what people need, and he understands how to navigate that. For him to go really to Bowie is really a kind of confined place. They're kind of special over there. They have their own little ways, and they've created their own vibe in their community. So for him to be able to penetrate that and become the mayor speaks volumes to me. And I just think that he needs to have the boots on the ground with people surrounding him that have a voice, but moreover have the ability to articulate what he's doing and for people to be able to have it received. And he needs to replicate his infrastructure so it really represents him properly.
Marcia, one question that I posed to the mayor had to do with the HBCUs and the Black college presidents in the area. Morgan, University of Baltimore, UMBC, College Park, Coppin, Bowie, St. Mary's, UDC, Howard University. All of these institutions have Black presidents. What could that be to Black progress? What could that mean to Black progress?
Well, if you could rally them to sit in one room and to understand and for them to buy into a real clearly defined vision, develop a real mission and a deployment that won't compromise who they are, where they are, but allow the broader conversation to be had. And you have to be able to do it so that they still feel comfortable, so they still feel protected, for real. But they are running everything that's happening. All these people that are going to their schools, living in the state of Maryland, should be able to vote. Hopefully they will have registered. Hopefully they will be looking and taught what they need to do to build communities. That should all be part of their civics class. That should be part of their DNA. And those are the minds and the spirits of our future. So why wouldn't you be taking the time to be able to make certain that they understand their responsibility in each one of these elections?
I think what I most appreciated, I'm sorry. What I most appreciated was understanding of politics and economics, that the politics mean nothing if they don't translate into economics, and his ability to navigate. And he said I essentially heard the man say that he's a multinational corporation. They have boots on the ground in other states and other countries. You know, when I think of Black Wall Street, Marsha, and the awards we've given away in Harlem, but 1,700 awards from New York to New Orleans. When I think of that power, you know, he has a great pool of business people and families to pull.
It sounds like he needs to also hire you, because you already have the infrastructure in 7 different major major cities.
Well, that's all.
And all we need is 24 counties, 23 counties in Baltimore City.
Good deal. Any final thoughts, Marsha Jews, Willie Flowers? And thank you for Willie. You want to get to our conversation maybe another day?
Yeah, we can. I mean, I know you got things to do. We can anytime you need me.
Okay, but any final thoughts for today? And again, thank you to Mayor Tim Adams, Mayor of Bowie. He's running for Comptroller. He said go to timadams.org. Marsha Jews, then Willie Flowers. Final thoughts.
Well, I just want you all to pay attention to what's going on around you, and particularly what's happening in Washington. And so if anybody that's out there that hears the sound of my voice, I want you to make certain that you're very clear about what happened with this insurgence of all of these terrorists that tried to take over the Capitol. I want you to pay attention to that. And I want you to also make certain that you pay attention to the people that work in your community, all of the politicians, your mayor, your governor, your senator, your congressman, all the people on your city council, everywhere. Make certain that you're involved. Make sure that your voice is heard. Don't sit back and allow this country to be taken over. Don't sit back and be comfortable allowing all of this madness to happen. You do have a voice. You are a citizen of this nation. And it's time that we all voice our concerns.
And if you see your elected official on the FBI watch list, make sure you share it on Facebook.
Right. And everywhere else. Because if you don't, I will.
Willie Flowers.
I just want to follow up on what Ms. Hughes broke down. I just think we need to change the narrative, because we don't lose. If we lost, we wouldn't be here. But I do think that we don't play at the same level of them. They do historic strikes. The young man who went into Mother Emanuel Church was sent there to that church for a historic reason, to send a message. Because of the history of Denmark, BC there, and the power of that church and what it did. Same thing here. And we're missing this stuff because we're not connecting the dots. Richard Collins being assassinated and right here, and nobody, we're trying to forget about that. Richard Collins was assassinated, killed a week before he was going to be graduate. And then there was a white boy right here in Hamden who went to New York and killed a brother. Something's going on. And we're playing this game of attacking each other, and thinking it's okay to allow this self-loathing that exists where Black children kill other Black children. We're doing their job for them, and we need to stop that. We need to figure out how to get the resources to our opportunities to young people, where they don't have to worry about turf battles and all that, as she was explaining earlier. And we also need to accept the fact that at this time in history, in the history of this world, Black African people are being recorded for how we die. And that's inconsistent with longevity. So we got to change what we're doing and support each other and drive the bargain toward winning, and not this narrative of, white people beating us down. That ain't the truth. We have the equipment, ability, tenacity, creativity, education, all that we need. We even got the underground economy on our side if we want to. We got to pull it together to win.
Yeah.
So
this segment of BmoreNews Morning Show has been brought to you by one of our sponsors, Baya.org, the upcoming Baya Conference, February 11th through 13th, 2021, featuring 3 important events we invite you to learn more about and attend: the HBCU Homecoming, HBCU Village, K through 12 Village. To learn more, you can find out about these events at Baya.org, BEYA.org. Special thank you to Dr. Tyrone Table and Marcia Hughes.
That was wonderful.
You have a powerful voice.
How can people get in touch with you?
Hit me up on mscpresident20@gmail.com, and you can always go to the website.
Where can they find you, Marcia Hughes?
Marcia Reeves Jews on Facebook, or marciajews@gmail.com.
My name's Donnie Glover, and you've watched another edition of the BmoreNews Morning Show. We went over a little longer. We had Mayor Tim Adams of
From
Bowie,
New Orleans.
originally from New Orleans.
No.
Up today, down tomorrow. Do your day, and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it, or gots to do it, regardless of how I feel. I am somebody. I am my brother. Good morning, Baltimore.
Good morning, Baltimore.